Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Bible. Today, I'm taking a break from weed. Well, I've been on a break for a while, so today I am smoking tobacco. Not just any tobacco, though. This is how seriously I take my tobacco. I don't even know what it's called. But it's from the tobacco experts. Gambler pipe tobacco. Is there a flavor? Gold, whatever the heck that means. But I didn't originally buy this stuff for smoking. It was actually for burning to some of my ancestors. One of them in particular who used to like to smoke. He actually did smoke cigarettes, but I'm not into cigarettes. And cigarettes were made very differently back then too. Me, on the other end, I've actually grown quite fond of the pipe, and I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, so of course I had to get not just any pipe, but a frickin' Gandalf pipe. And that is the design that came with it. I had options. I could have gotten a wooden one, but you know me. I'm all about the black and the white and the gray in between. And it is quite tasty, I will admit. It's very different from smoking weed, but it's nice. And the reason why I've given myself a bit of a break from smoking weed is, one, I'm having a bit of a control issue with it. You know, when I have it, I have a tendency to smoke all of it, or at least not space it out very well. I'm not great at saving it, and then plus, you know, it always makes me tired no matter what. I do sleep a lot better with it, but I like having my energy. I like having enough energy to go work out and do stuff and not be sleepy all day afterwards. So I am now deliberately cutting back even more on weed than I was before. But I'll still do it here and there, for sure. I'll definitely have videos where I bring it back, because I prefer to do these videos while stoned. So yeah, this is probably the first one in a long time that I have not been stoned doing a video. So enjoy the sobriety while it lasts. And what are we talking about today in the Bible? Well, we are on the very next chapter from where we left off last time. We are on chapter 14, and we're actually going to go through 4 chapters today, as quickly as I can, because there is a good chunk to cover, but I feel like it should go through pretty quickly. Trying to keep these videos less than an hour, but it's difficult. There's just so much to talk about. And it's just so fun for me. And today we have quite the roller coaster on our hands. Literally, up and down, back and forth, between being good advice and not so good advice. And unfortunately, you know, I can't make the pipe last the entire time, because with these, it's like with pipes, tobacco, I guess, you kind of have to keep puffing on it, sort of. I mean, I guess kind of like weed, but maybe a little more often. I don't know. I guess if you don't want to keep relighting it, or is it, maybe it's a little bit better. But another reason why I'm also cutting back on weed, oh yeah, tobacco makes you salivate a lot more too. Complete opposite of weed, obviously. But one of the other reasons that I've cut back on weed is because, well, I wanted to actually try and get into shrooms a little bit more. I've done them a couple times. I've I've told one of my stories, my main story about being on shrooms on this channel before. But I feel like there's a bit more I could get out of it, out of shrooms in general, and so I can't afford both weed and shrooms at the same time, so I kind of have to pick and choose with what I want to do. And actually just got some shrooms from a contact that I've purchased from before, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing what I learn on this next trip. And yeah, believe me, I'll share it if I feel it is pertinent and important enough. It may just be very personal, because I am trying to get over some personal things still that I've been told I need to work on. So that's mainly the reason why I've got them. I'm trying to do meditation, self-reflection, and really getting in touch with my intuition. So it should be fun. But let's get back to, of course, what you all came here for by now, if you must be watching all these videos. And I'm not kidding. The advice that they have today is actually not bad. Some of it. So let's get to what we have for today. In Deuteronomy chapter 14. Nice little burn on my tongue. I like that. All right. So the very first thing that God / Moses starts out the gate with is, "Ye shall not cut yourselves," in the first verse. So God is against self-mutilation, which is great, right? Well, that statement is actually false. God is 100% for self-mutilation, but it has to be the type of mutilation he's okay with. Because, if you remember his little covenant with Abraham thing he got to do with the wee-wee, yeah, God's totally fine with self-mutilation, so long as it's your genitals. But the specific reason where this is coming in, and it's actually kind of unusual. Maybe this was a cultural thing for other people to do back then in other countries. I'm not really sure. But we're just taking this at face value, like we do here. And what is all with this information? It says, from the beginning of the verse, "Ye are the children of the Lord your God. Ye shall not cut yourselves, nor make any baldness between your eyes for the dead." What was that about? Baldness between the eyes? Yeah, did they all have unibrows or something? And God was telling him, don't shave your unibrows for the sake of someone who passed on? I don't know. It's usually the big nose, not eyebrows. That is the stereotype for them. So, I mean, maybe this was, maybe this was more of a head shaving. I think that's what it was. They would shave their heads in mourning for someone very close to them that had died. And God's basically saying, change your traditions of that. Don't shave your head when people die. I don't know why God would consider that such a big deal, other than the fact that he's saying in verse 2, "For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord hath chosen thee to be a peculiar people." Basically saying he wants y'all to be weird, different, above all the nations, so throwing in that little spiritual racism there, and, like we said from the last chapter, don't be racist because you're not better than anyone else. That's what God's saying. No. Remember that you're better than everyone else because I chose you. That's why you're better than everyone else. So, don't be racist because you're better, be racist because I picked you. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but that was it's just something that kind of came to me when I was reviewing that in that last chapter. The excuses are horrible, really. Like, really, a promise to favor one group of people just for them being born into a specific nation, that's not a good reason. That's in fact, that's worse than them actually behaving better and being a more morally advanced people than the people around them. But they're not that either. And Yahweh definitely makes sure of that. They may be peculiar, but they're not morally greater than the nations around them. And we'll see some of those facts today. Like, we haven't seen enough of those already. But, of course, we'll see even more. But amongst some of the other good things, too, because actually God goes right back to, or Moses goes right back to giving good advice, because he has a full list. We kind of went through these before, and I didn't really go through them before, because I leave that to the scientists and the professionals. But apparently, don't take my word on it, do your own research, but according to what people have researched, this list in chapter 14 of animals that the Israelites are allowed to eat are actually healthier to consume than the animals given, because two lists are actually given. Animals the Israelites can eat, and animals the Israelites cannot eat. And that is actually, great advice. It's healthier to eat oxen or cows and sheep and certain animals, because they don't eat other animals, they only eat grass. They're healthier. They're just naturally healthier to consume. And so that's great. Moses/God is looking out for the Israelites' health, telling them what to eat and what not to eat. And roughly about 2/3 of the way through this chapter, he's going on, giving some more good advice here. He says, "You shall not eat of anything that dieth of itself." So any animal that passes away on its own, don't eat it. Died of old age, died of sickness, don't eat it. Well, dieth of itself. So I'm assuming that means dies of old age and not sickness. It doesn't really specify if the animal dies of sickness or not. But the main, I would hope they wouldn't eat it if it died of sickness. That should probably be pretty self-explanatory, I would think, but you never know with Yahweh. But he specifies, if it dies on its own, not of old age, but like I said, I'm literally just reading what's here in the King James Version. Ye shall not eat of anything that dieth of itself. Maybe you're not supposed to eat if it commits suicide. Animals do that. I don't know. But the point is, if you didn't kill it yourself, don't eat it. So, okay, great advice. You're avoiding potential diseases and a tough old dead body to chew on. Sure, great. But then what does he say right after that? Get this. He says, "Thou shalt give it to the stranger in thy gates, that he may eat it. Or thou mayest sell it unto the alien." Not literal aliens like green or grays, but like strangers. It's just another word for strangers in the Old Testament. So God is saying, you have to have these food standards. But if you want to sell a dead animal to a stranger, you can. If you want to give dead meat away that hasn't been killed that you're not allowed to eat because I said it's unhealthy, yeah, you can give it away to a stranger. I don't care about that, but don't you eat it. Doesn't that seem kind of messed up? Like, I wouldn't eat this poisonous or, messed up food, but here you go. That's what God is encouraging. He says, put a price tag on that shit. If you want to, take full advantage of it. That's kind of racist, don't you think? God's not looking out for anyone else on this. He said, I mean, if they're willing to eat it, maybe. I mean, that kind of makes sense. But deliberately selling a dead animal that you're not allowed to eat because of health stipulations, but it's totally fine for you to sell it to a complete stranger, I don't find that very morally appealing. I mean, how would you feel if you went into a country and they offered you an animal that died on its own? I mean, if you know it's not healthy, if you know they got better food, if you're willing to pay for that better food, but all they're offering you is dead animals that died on their own, that are old and tough and ew. But that's all they want to give to you, that's, according to Yahweh, that's perfectly fine. They can screw with your health like that. I don't see what's cool about that. I don't see what's morally okay about that. And then let's move on to chapter 15, where we once again discuss slavery. But this is actually a very positive twist on slavery here. Well, at least at the beginning, because sure, the Israelites do not conduct slavery in the Old Testament like the other nations. Oh no. They are different. Let's talk about how different they are. Because starting out, it sounds okay-ish. I mean, slavery is not okay, period. But compared to what we typically know of as slaves, they're caught, they're sold, or whatever, they're traded, and usually kept for life, or till they're killed, or fired, or for whatever reason. Most of the time you don't hear about slaves being freed or released or anything like that, but that is actually the opposite case of what we're about to dive into here. And I'm pretty sure we discussed this before, but I can't remember these specific details being part of it. I probably should go back and check out those other passages on it. But this particular passage on slavery and, oh yes, also canceling debts. Everyone loves talking about canceling debts. So, yeah, those two things are what we're starting off with right here. So, first couple of verses in chapter 15. And at the end of every 7 years, thou shalt make a release. And this is the manner of the release. Every creditor that lendeth aught unto his neighbor shall release it. He shall not exact it of his neighbor or of his brother, because it is called the Lord's release. Okay, we haven't gotten to the slavery yet. This is just talking about the debt. But so basically what this is saying, every 7 years, whatever debt anyone has to each other, it's canceled. Cool, right? Sounds awesome. Dope. Be nice if we had that today, wouldn't it? But did you catch the last part of that verse? Of his brother, his neighbor. It's very specific as to who is having their debts canceled. Why? Well, because in verse 3, it says, of a foreigner thou mayest exact it again. But that which is thine with thy brother, thine hand shall release. So, the releasing of debt only applies to other Jews, not to Gentiles, not to strangers. No one actually gets free from this. Just the people that are born into the privileged, chosen race of God. Yeah. And what's also kind of interesting to me, like, I don't see where there's anywhere that says you couldn't make a career out of this debt thing. Like, if it were me, okay, maybe in another life, not in this one, because I'm not into collecting debt. But Imagine if you knew that your debt, no matter what, was going to be wiped out every 7 years, and you'd be given a clean bill of credit. Don't you think there'd be some people trying to take advantage of that? Trying to go into debt to build a business or to just live whatever life they want to, constantly borrowing money from people. And then once the 7 years come around, oh, sorry, I don't have to pay it. It's the Lord's release. I'm Jewish, you're Jewish. I don't have to pay you shit. Maybe there's something I'm missing here. Maybe there's something in the original Hebrew that specifies a cancellation of a loophole here, but that's the loophole I'm seeing. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to just wipe all the debt away. I mean, what if we all of a sudden, what if America decided it no longer owed China all of its trillions of dollars? Like, we just suddenly implemented the Lord's release. And we were like, oh, sorry, China, we're not going to pay you because our God says we don't have to. I mean, yeah, America's not Jewish or whatever, not technically it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a country for all religions. But, what if we did that? How do you think China would feel? How do you think anyone would feel if they were owed a crap ton of money? They had poured all of these finances into this individual. And then after 7 years of trying to get your money back, poof, you're not getting it back. This does not seem like a very good business venture. And I don't claim to be a business intelligent type of person, but that just doesn't really strike me as a very good idea. But maybe they're making up for it with strangers. Maybe they expect to be borrowed, to be lending out money to strangers, which kind of makes me wonder if that has anything to do with why so many Jews or people that affiliate with that religion own banks in the world and are lending out money to people left and right. To where, I'm wondering if they're ever going to think, oh, now the world owes us, we should inflict. I'm not saying they will. Some people are certainly trying to. They're trying to enforce quote-unquote anti-Semitic laws, trying to cut down free speech so that they don't get their religion criticized, even though, free speech, everyone's under equal fire for criticism. Even myself. No one is exempt. No religion is exempt. No religion should ever be exempt from criticism and from being looked into thoroughly and questioned for its morals. But, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm pointing this stuff out. Ah, yes. And then it goes on regarding debt and money and giving it out to people. This is a very back and forth verse right here. Verse 7 of chapter 15, it says, "If there be among you a poor man, of one of your brethren, within any of thy gates in thy land, which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not harden thine heart, nor shut thine hand from thy poor brother." And God goes on to, or Moses goes on to, say throughout these next verses, like, he's encouraging giving out money to poor people. He's encouraging generosity, giving out a helping hand. I'm 100% for that. Nothing wrong with that. Good on Moses / Yahweh for suggesting this. Verse 11, "For the poor shall never cease out of the land. Therefore I command thee, saying, Thou shalt open thine hand wide unto thy brother, to thy poor and to thy needy in thy land." And that's great. That's fantastic. Except for the part where where God/Moses thinks poor people will be around forever. I mean, maybe they will be. Maybe that is partially a fact of life right there. More than likely so. And yeah, we should always be helping out those who are less fortunate than us. But once again, the emphasis is laid out here, and I'm sure you heard it. You heard me say it, because it's right here in the verse. If there be among you a poor man of one of your brethren. Verse 11, open thine hand wide unto thy brother, to the poor and to the needy in thy land. There's no emphasis on here about being generous to strangers, giving money to the alien, or to the poor stranger passing through the land. No, it's a specific emphasis on your poor brothers, the ones you're related to. You don't need to help anyone else, just your own kind. That's what's being encouraged here. And that's where it goes from, well, that's where it kind of enters the gray, because be nice, but only be nice to your own kind. Like, come on, be only nice to your own people. Be only generous to those of your countrymen. That's like if there was a law in America that said you can only help other citizens. You should only help other citizens. There's only an emphasis on helping other citizens. If they're strangers, if they're visiting, if they're refugees from another country, it's whatever. Wouldn't that be kind of a dick move for Americans to do if we treated only fellow Americans nicely, and we just were just standoffish to everyone else? That wouldn't be nice. That wouldn't be morally applaudable. So yeah, help people, but help everyone. Be kind to everyone. Now we get to the racism. Sorry, that was the racism. Now we're getting to the slavery. An Hebrew man, or an Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee, and serve thee 6 years. Then in the 7th year thou shalt let him go free from thee. Awesome. Releasing slaves. Releasing people in bondage to you every 7 years. Golden. I'm all for that. And when thou sendest him out free from thee, thou shalt not let him go away empty-handed. Don't just kick him out the door after these 7 years. Thou shalt furnish him liberally, freely, out of thy flock, and out of thy floor, and out of thy winepress, of that wherewith the Lord thy God hath blessed thee, thou shalt give unto him. So you don't let this guy go out empty-handed, or this woman. If you got to release them, you give them stuff to where they're going to be okay for a little while, to be able to take care of themselves. Great. Love it. That's awesome. Not too enamored by the slavery part. Like it says, being sold unto thee. That's highly morally questionable. Not a big fan of that. But they're getting released every 7 years. So that's nice. And they're getting sent out with a care package. Not many companies do that these days. If they fire you, they fire you. Even if it's not on bad terms and they're just releasing people, they don't always give a departing package, of a bonus or something. Shit, half the time they don't even give you a 2 weeks notice, which is, I find, very morally deplorable. But notice it says, if thy brother, and Hebrew man, or Hebrew woman. Interesting that it doesn't say sister. I feel like it should, but, there's been some very clear other passages making it very clear the difference between the quote unquote value between men and women in this chapter, and we're actually, or in this holy book, quote unquote, and we're actually going to see a little bit of that again in the next chapter. But the main point I'm trying to point out here is that it is emphasizing Hebrew men, Hebrew women being released from slavery. There is nothing mentioned about Gentile, foreign slaves being released. Nothing about that said. Nothing about sending them out with stuff. They're not getting released. They're not getting freebies being released. It is only fellow Hebrews that get released from slavery, from each other. No freeing of the captives that they've taken in war or anything like that. I mean, if they were supposed to do that, they should have included that with this, but it does not say that. It specifically says Hebrew men and women. So, yeah. Oh, and another mutilation that God is 100% okay with of your body. If for whatever reason, and I think I covered this previously, because I'm pretty sure this is the second time this is brought up. Again, Deuteronomy does a lot of do-overs, a lot of repeats of history and laws. So I'm pretty sure I mentioned this before, but we're going to bring it back out for emphasis, because I'm pretty sure we weren't talking about self-mutilation or body mutilation during that time. At least I don't think we were. But if for whatever reason the slave and the master have such a great connection that the slave does not want to leave, oh yes, yes. They don't want to leave, and in fact, there could be other reasons why they don't want to leave. Sometimes, and I remember this actually was in the previous passage, but it's not here from what I'm seeing. Wow, no, it's not here. So in the previous passage, it mentioned that a slave could become, or a servant could become, so enamored or loyal to their master, employer, permanent employer, that they could say, hey, I love working for you so much. You're such a nice master. You don't beat me like everyone else. And, the wages are fairly good here, so I will work for you for the rest of my life. And if a, maidservant or if a man or woman in that position does that, they are to, according to verse 17 of chapter 15, thou shalt take an awl, which is like basically like a peg of some kind, and thrust it through his ear unto the door. So basically, you're going to give him a very unsterilized and filthy ear piercing. And he shall be thy servant forever. I don't know if that includes the afterlife or not. But I'm assuming it's, hopefully it's just for the rest of this life. And also unto thy maidservant thou shalt do likewise. So that was, and according to some people, that was the origin of ear piercings. Slavery. I don't really agree with that being the origin. I think piercings were aesthetic. I wouldn't be surprised if women invented that actually, but men could have too. Just trying to be hardcore or something. I don't know. But so if a Christian ever tells you that piercings or self-mutilation is against God's will, you can point to these verses and be like, no. And this is actually what some Christians have done who got piercings. They would point to this verse and be like, oh no, see, I got an earring because Jesus is my master. and I'm his slave forever. It's funny, but I mean that it makes logical sense to me. So it's funny to me when I see conservative Christians that kind of lose their mind, that they don't even know their own scripture well enough to know, what's quote unquote modernly applicable or whatever. And plus, these rules aren't even for Christians. These aren't even for Jesus followers. These are for the Jews. These are for people way back in the day that don't even practice this stuff anymore. And hopefully never will, because slavery is not okay. And then the last bit, for some reason, God jumps back to the whole diet thing and mentions, oh yeah, by the way, at the very end of this chapter, verse 23, thou shalt not eat the blood thereof. Thanks. Cool. Don't eat the blood of an animal. Got it. That seems pretty self-explanatory too. I mean, well, some people are into those slightly more rare steaks, so that would be an issue for a Jew. Can't have too bloody of a lamb chop or steak. But hey, I got nothing against that. I'm not into blood consumption. I don't understand people that are. Never given it a thought. I've seen what people say about it. Not into it. I am for this particular ruling in the Bible. Don't eat blood. Unhealthy. Nasty. Potential for diseases. You got to be very careful if you're going to do that, because you got to know what's in it. Otherwise, you are going to get sick. That's a very, very fast way to get sick. And really, consuming blood is not a normal thing for humans. I mean, maybe it can be something that is developed over time. I don't know. I'm not an expert. Don't come to me for advice for that shit. Because I'm going to tell you, just stay away from it. Because I feel like it's smart enough to... I feel like this is smart advice. Next little fun tidbit that we have is in chapter 16, verse 10. And if you've seen my past videos, this will sound familiar. And thou shalt keep the feast of weeks unto the Lord thy God with a tribute of free will offering in thine hand, which thou shalt give unto the Lord thy God according as the Lord thy God hath blessed thee. So this is a, once again, reminder of free will offerings that are being demanded, which, I mean, maybe there is some freedom in what they bring, but there's definitely no freedom in that they're not allowed to bring anything at all. So is it really a free will offering? I'm going to have to say no. Oh yes, and then we come to that little bit of sexism in the Bible. One of their little moments, because God has a very specific order that excludes women entirely, 100%. It's very simple. It's not something that most people would think about, maybe, when coming across it, but here it is, verse 16. 3 times a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before the Lord empty. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of the Lord thy God, which he hath given thee. So at least the perks of that, the women don't have to show up and bring anything, but every single male has to show up to these events, and they better bring something with them. That's an order. So, men only, everyone's got to bring something. You know, what if women want to show up to this? What if they want to bring something? No. Men only, apparently. I mean, there's nothing saying that women can't show up to this, but it specifically specifies that it has to be all the males. And usually it includes a certain age bracket, but this time it actually doesn't. It just says all thy males. So I wonder what the infant males had to bring. Maybe their dads came up with a gift for them or something like that. But still, this is a strictly all male thing, and there's no reason given why it has to be all the men. No reason. The only thing we can assume is that Moses / this version of God somehow values men over women. That is the only conclusion that we can really come to here. Otherwise, why wouldn't women be included? Why wouldn't their involvement, their giving be just as important here? Why do we have a specific moment for men only? And in addition to that, why don't we have a specific moment for women only to do this, or to have their own special function for God if they're on equal level? Because the fact is, according to Yahweh, they're not. Sad, but true, according to the scripture. And yeah, obviously I don't agree with that. But now back to something a little positive. Verse 19. God / Moses is talking about dishing out judgment. And this is great. This is great right here. I'm pretty sure this was mentioned before. But it is once again being mentioned, like everything else is getting repeated here. Thou shalt not wrest judgment. Thou shalt not respect persons, neither take a gift. For a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise, and pervert the words of the righteous. That which is altogether just shalt thou follow, that thou mayest live and inherit the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. So what is he saying with these strange words? Thou shalt not wrest judgment, thou shalt not respect persons, neither take a gift. What does that mean? That means, well, if the gift doesn't give you a hint, it's bribery. This is talking about don't accept bribery. Don't be biased. Don't show favor to one person over the other. Don't show favor to a rich person over a poor person. That's kind of the general idea. Be fair. Be just. And that second verse, verse 20, it's actually really great. It's a great verse. That which is altogether just shalt thou follow. Whatever's fair, whatever's balanced. That's another word for just. It's balanced. It's finding the balance and restoring it. And that is great. I am 100% all for that. All right, now let's actually jump into the cloudier waters about that. I'm actually going to skip a small portion because I'm going to save it because of the type of content it is, and it kind of branches out a little bit out of this circle, but there's this other portion here that talks about judging, so it kind of falls along the same lines. I mean, so does the other one, so does this other passage that I'm going to come back to, but this one, I want to read this to you. Verse 8 of chapter 17. I'm going to kind of paraphrase for you, but you can read it. This is verses 8 through 11, and then I'm going to read verse 12. So, but you can read along with me if you want. Deuteronomy 17:8. If there is a matter that they're basically saying, if there is something that a situation that arises that is too difficult for the common people to figure out, they don't know the laws or whatever, or it's just really complicated and they can't figure it out, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to pray to God or anything like that? Actually, no. Whatever this difficult situation is, they are supposed to go to the Levites, to the priests, to whoever the local or current judge is at the time. And they're supposed to go and talk to these people and trust whatever, literally, whatever these guys say. And yes, They are guys. There are no women judges doing this. Verse 10. I'm actually going to read 10, 11, and 12. Thou shalt do according to the sentence which they of that place which the Lord shall choose shall show you. Thou shalt observe to do according to all that they inform thee. Kind of like giving like whatever they say, whatever these people say in the future, you got to do whatever they tell you, because they are in a position of authority. They're Levites. They are of the priestly lineage. They are born into the extra special group of people. Extra racism there for you. Because remember, promote all the Jews, but then within the Jews, there's the Levites. They are the extra special people that you gotta treat extra nice, and that you cannot question. According to the sentence of the law which they shall teach thee. So they are supposed to follow the law. Supposed to. According to the judgment which they will tell you, that shall you do. Thou shalt not decline from the sentence which they shall show thee to the right hand nor to the left. So whatever they say, don't question it, don't alter it, don't do something slightly different. You do exactly whatever they tell you, even if it's illogical, if you disagree with it. And in fact, if you don't do what they tell you, what do you do? What do they do? What is supposed to happen to someone who says, "Oh, I don't think that judgment's very fair"? What happens to that person who thinks for themselves and questions authority? Verse 12 of chapter 17. The man that will do presumptuously and will not hearken, will not listen unto the priest that standeth to minister therefore before the Lord thy God unto the judge, even that man shall die. And thou shalt put away the evil from Israel. Oh yeah, and all the people shall hear and fear, and do no more presumptuously. So, if you have a problem, and you take it to the priests, the judge, and you don't like what their answer is of what they tell you to do, and you decide to do something different, that's the death penalty, according to Yahweh. Ain't that great? Oh, no banishing, no imprisonment, no slap on the wrist of, no. That man shall die. Yeah, the Lord really is full of mercy and great kindness. Great kindness, isn't he? Oh, that's so Yahweh right there. Oh. All right, now we're going to jump back to this other fun little portion. That also has to do with judging, but is a little bit more... Well, it's just as serious, actually. And I will be honest, I don't know why Moses can't bother to put all these passages together in one chunk to make it easier. But, maybe the universe dictated it that way and scattered these messed up little tidbits throughout the Bible so that we'd actually have a few more hints to be like, hey, red flag, another red flag over there. They don't keep all the red flags together. So, I don't know if that's a good thing. A lot of people seem to ignore them. So, I don't know what good it's done, but we sure are finding a lot of them, aren't we? the very beginning of chapter 17. Right. So, you remember how we talked about a couple videos ago, might have been the last one. In fact, I think it was the last one. But, you remember how, we talked about how, they said, you know, if one of your relatives, one of your friends, one of your really close people, if they come to you and they say, hey, check out these other religions. Let's go serve other gods. Let's open our minds a little bit. You remember what God said to do to those people? No matter how close they are to you, God pronounced unaliving once more. Yes. If your own relatives proselytize and say, hey, let's go worship other gods or something like that. And not even, it was more like, yeah. Throwing rocks at you till you're dead. Well, that gets continued in chapter 17. We find out some other details about this sort of thing. If there be found among you, verse 2 of chapter 17, if there be found among you within any of your gates, which the Lord thy God giveth thee, man or woman, that hath brought wickedness in the sight of the Lord thy God in transgressing his covenants. What does this mean? You know, how did these people, piss off God this time? Oh, if they have gone and served other gods and worshipped them, either the sun or moon or any of the host of heaven, which I have not commanded, like God would command them to worship anyone else but him because he's so self-centered. And it be told thee, so basically if you find out that anyone, even if they don't tell you about it, and they keep it to themselves, if they leave their religion and they convert to paganism or Christianity, well, Christianity didn't exist back then, but if it had, would have applied. What is to happen to these people? Well, you will, verse 5. Oh, no, because the words are so fun. Verse 4. If you find out, it be told you, and you've heard it, and inquired diligently, and behold, it be true. So, make sure it's true. Make sure you're not falsely accusing someone of leaving your religion because, oh my gosh, why would anyone want to leave this religion? It's so fair. It's so non-sexist. It's so free. It's so loving and full of mercy. Why would anyone want to stop worshiping Yahweh? I couldn't imagine why. Oh, what if that is the case? If it turns out to be true and someone has exercised freedom of religion, what do we do to them? Oh, well, verse 4, that such abomination is wrought in Israel. It is an abomination. Verse 5, then thou shalt bring forth that man or that woman which hath committed that wicked thing unto thy gates, and even the man or the woman, and shalt stone them with stones till they die. At the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses shall he that is worthy of death be put to death. The hands of the witnesses shall be first upon him to put him to death. That means the people who caught the person exercising freedom of religion, it has to be 2 people that saw this person exercising freedom of religion. They have to be the first ones to cast the stone, to cast the rocks at this person who just wanted to practice freedom of religion and were keeping it to themselves. Because God says that is worthy of death. That is worthy of immediate extermination part his soul from their body, one rock at a time, till they die. And if you caught him, if you're the one that caught him doing it, you get to be the first one to throw the first rock. Ain't that lovely? Ain't that merciful? No banishing them from the country, no putting them in prison, no trying to convince them to come back to Yahweh. Just off them. Just get rid of them. We ain't got time for discussion. We ain't got time for open-mindedness. We ain't got time for freedom of religion. Get rid of that. That's what this version of God says. Fucked up, isn't it? But now let's end on a slightly more positive note. At the very end of chapter... Start over. At the very end of chapter 17, God is actually, or Moses is giving out some guidelines on how to pick a king. Which is kind of interesting, because if you know anything about how the choosing of the first king of Israel went, God wasn't really all that happy when they decided to get a king. Almost, and like, I was actually kind of pissed. He still allowed it to happen. He still chose a person. He used his prophet Samuel to pick someone out. But he was not happy about it. So it makes this whole last chunk, it's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 verses of requirements for having a king. But the fact that it's here at all is very peculiar. It's almost like it was like God changed his mind later on a little bit, just with the way his attitude was. Like maybe he thought Israel would decide to never want a king, but the Israelites decided they wanted a king later on. And at least Moses saw that coming. Somehow Yahweh didn't, and got irritated about it later, but still went through with it. And then, yeah, there's a whole mess of interesting stories about that. But there's one particular verse I want to focus on here, and that is verse 17 of chapter 17. And it says, regarding the duties of a king, or the rules for a king, one of the things is, neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart turn not away, neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. I approve of this. I think this is wise. Most people would agree in this day and age, unless you're in the Middle East, where they're still totally fine with having multiple wives, or unless you're a certain sect of Mormon. But yeah, most people would agree, yeah, just stick with one wife. And he also says, I actually think it is kind of a wise tidbit that he says, nor should he, really make himself rich. Put that money, it's not really saying it here, but the wiser thing, where else would this money go if not into the king's personal coffers? Well, back to the people, back into the country, back into society, taking care of the temple, taking care of the people, whatever. Anything but going to the king's personal bank account. I'm cool with that. Yeah, the king should probably be the richest person, but at the same time, they don't need to be filthy, stinking rich above the entire rest of the country by miles and light years and such. And the reason why I wanted to point that out to you is because of the interesting irony of it all that comes later on down in the stories of the Bible. Because the first king actually stayed within these stipulations, believe it or not. He only got one wife. He did get a concubine, which is like a... personal friend with benefits, kind of, except they own you. Abraham kind of sort of did that with Hagar. She kind of sort of became his concubine, even though that's not what she originally was. But concubines, they're generally there for sex, and in this day and age, back then, also for bearing children. In fact, you remember King David, he had a best friend named Jonathan. Well, that Jonathan actually was not a son of the queen of Saul, of his dad's wife. He was actually the son of the concubine, of the personal, I guess, sex slave would actually be the best way to describe it. I guess I don't know if they were chosen against their will or not. I'm not really sure how the whole concubine system works. They didn't really go into that much detail in the Bible about it. So King Saul, if we're being technical about him not having an official second wife, then yeah, he technically stayed within this particular rule. And he didn't get too filthy rich. He did make a mistake once that irritated God by keeping some of the gains from a conquest that God was not happy about. God wanted him to wipe out everything, including all the animals and all the creatures involved. Like, it didn't really make sense. Saul was being a normal king about it. It's like, hey, it's livestock and wealth and stuff. Like, why wouldn't I preserve this? Even though God's telling him to kill them all. And God got really irritated about that. But the next two kings really fucked that rule in the ass. Because King David himself had 8 wives. I'm not sure how many concubines he had, but I'm pretty sure he had some on the side. I honestly cannot remember. But I did look up the wives ordeal, and he had 8. He had 8 of them. And then his son that ended up ruling, one of the many sons. He had like 18 or so kids between all his wives and whatever concubines he had. It may have just been wives. That would have been something. I guess. Maybe that would have been a statement back then. I don't know. But and David actually, he didn't really have much of an emphasis on wealth. He got in touch with his accountant once to see how much Israel had. I think that was just military numbers he was interested in. But yeah, overall, David wasn't really into making himself wealthy or anything like that. But yeah, his son, King Solomon, one of the big contributors to the Bible, because, and in my personal opinion, he had some of the best writings to offer to the Bible. King Solomon, actually, he wrote 2, possibly 3 books. I'm not sure if he wrote the book of Ecclesiastes or not, but he wrote Proverbs and the Song of Solomon. Oh god, the Song of Solomon is going to be fun when we get to it. That's basically ancient porn. Oh my gosh. Did you ever think you would hear that there's actually porn in the Bible? Yeah, it's there. Whole Song of Solomon, ancient ass porn. And you know what? Maybe I will pull out one of some other classic porn language that wouldn't be considered porn these days, but definitely was maybe a little bit sooner. I don't know. I went to this medieval festival thingy once, and I happened to get a free little booklet of historical porn, of what it was like. Like, it was just, like, literally, it was given to me. I did not go out of my way to find this. And it wasn't, there were some pictures in it, but it was mostly like poetry. And it's just, the language is hilarious. So maybe I will include that when I get back to, hopefully I still have it, when I get to the Book of Solomon. But yeah, so anyways, that guy, yeah, Solomon, King Solomon, the Bible said, only have one wife and don't get rich. Yeah, King Solomon, he got 700 wives and 300 concubines. And he was filthy, stinking rich on top of that. He married a lot of princesses, made a lot of alliances, and got filthy, stinking rich. He did put a lot of that money, to be fair, he put a lot of that money back into at least the temple. I don't know how much he put back into the people, but he definitely poured a lot of it into the temple. So maybe that's why God wasn't overly pissed about those 2 rules getting broken, because he was getting a good chunk of that back. Maybe, I don't know. But they say Solomon was the wisest king at the same time. So it's a very interesting combination of all 3. We have this specific law that, and it even said, don't get more than one wife, because they will turn you away from me. That's basically what that verse 17 says. And that is exactly what happened to Solomon. Even though he poured a lot of that money back into the temple for Yahweh, he did some other worshiping on the side, apparently. And after it all, he was supposedly so wise that he wrote a whole book about wisdom and the things that he learned, supposedly, after a whole bunch of his escapades and everything. It wasn't really that exciting. It was just, it's mostly him making alliances and fucking, I guess. I don't even know. I wonder if he actually saw all those women as being attractive to him, or if he was just making alliances half the time. I really have no idea. But he definitely went full opposite direction on that law. And I just find that absolutely hilarious. Plus, in addition to the fact that he is supposedly the wisest man that ever lived, even though he destroyed that law, basically. I mean, yeah, he got it from his dad. He just cranked the knob all the way and then broke it off and then kept turning it. Lord works in mysterious ways. Don't break his rules unless you pour a lot of money back into it, and then, maybe he'll cut you some slack. It seems like Yahweh is someone who can definitely be bought off or have his arm twisted to where he's either... you can either really piss him off, or you can twist his arm into not being fully strict about all his laws. And yeah, that is the end of our video for today. That is the conclusion to the roller coaster. So I hope you have enjoyed the episode. I hope you found things that were enlightening and eye-opening. And of course, if you have any comments or anything, I don't always say this, but if you have comments, feel free to leave them, and you know what? I don't even care if they're positive or negative. I'm happy to get any comments really. Any comments are nice. Any attention is good attention. It's free advertising. So, share, discuss, and for God's sake, be logical. Be moral. Think for yourself. Use the damn brain that God gave you. Don't let people in a pulpit tell you, oh, this was only back then, so we don't really have to worry about it now. Remember what I said about foundations? You pick someone else's cracked, messed up foundation instead of building your own, you're going to have issues with your house. Same thing goes with beliefs. You pick someone else's cracked religion without looking into it and knowing exactly what you're dedicating yourself to, what you're believing in, you are inviting someone else's problems into your belief system, your personal belief system. Everyone needs to develop their own belief system. Everyone needs to have their own unique religion, their own experiences, their own beliefs, their own set of morals when it comes to everything out there. Everyone needs to take the time to think for themselves. I believe that is what the real source of creation that put all this into order intended for us to do. To be able to think for ourselves, to be able to question, to be able to ask, is this really holy? Or is it Holey? So, join me next time for another episode of finding out just how badly this book is missing an E in the word holy. You have a great rest of your day. And until next time, my friends, stay safe and farewell.